Welcome to episode 383 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. In a moment, I'm joined by Laura Shields and Garrett Byrne from Unpost, along with Peter DeSantis from Giro. We'll discuss how Unpost was able to deliver 48% more parcels to more delivery points without increasing the number of hours worked in its last mile delivery network. This episode is sponsored by Giro. Giro's route optimization solution, Georoute, has been deployed by some of the world's most advanced postal and parcel networks. For more information about Giro, visit giro.ca. That's Giro.ca. Joining me on the line are Garrett Byrne, Head of Implementation at Unpost, Laura Shields, Head of Ops Solutions at Unpost, and Peter DeSantis, Project Manager and Business Development at Giro. We're going to be talking about, we're going to get stuck into a bit of a case study really today, aren't you? Why don't I just sort of set the scene a little bit though? We've got a postal industry these days that's looking to squeeze every cent, every penny, every peso that possibly can when it comes to not just declining letter volumes, but parcel volumes in a very competitive environment. You've got the challenges of workforce. You've got challenges of competitors out there. There's all kinds of things that are happening. Peter, can you just tell us a little bit about what work Giro and Unpost have been doing together and some of the highlights perhaps that from the years you've been working together?
We've been working with Unpost for quite a few years now, and some of the highlights really started in 2022 when we started working on an upgrade project with them. And this project really was a chance for us to start collaborating and find a new way of working, a little bit more agile way of working to really respond to their evolving needs. So when we started the project, one of the interesting things was that we had a scope and requirements that we started working towards. But during the course of the project, Laura and the team, they came back to us and they needed to do a quick shift. So we were going to deploy a new solution to optimize the last mile routes. It was going to be a national deployment, but they came quickly during the project and they said, you know what, we need to quickly turn around and do a test and learn, what they called. Something that they can deploy the solution or some designs on 3 of their depots, 1 urban, 1 rural, and 1 mixed depot. At that point, they came over to Montreal. We worked together on a workshop for a week initially. We started making some really good progress, and the team decided to actually stay a second week. So when they were able to leave Montreal, they had some preliminary designs, and we had user stories, different types of requirements that we needed to continue to evolve in the software. And that's really where the relationship started to take off, and really that collaboration hit a different gear, where we were really able to get in tune with their operational needs. As they were evolving, the team would come back to us with new challenges, new projects, and we would work with them to adapt quickly so that they can give their senior stakeholders and their unions the information they needed to launch this change within the organization.
Well, Laura and Garrett, how about you set the scene for us? Why don't you just tell us a bit about some of the key pressure points that you were responding to when you embarked on this project?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I might just jump in there. I suppose, like you mentioned already, Unpost continues to face the same challenges as most other postal organisations, in that our core letter mail was in decline, our parcel volume was growing, and we have a fixed cost base. It's a very competitive market in terms of delivering parcels, and traditionally we would have struggled to implement change at any significant pace, really. I suppose COVID-19 changed the world for lots of different reasons, and it had a massive impact on our business. A very steep decline in the letter volume, at one stage running at maybe minus 30% decline. And on the plus side, I suppose we did have huge parcel growth. So Unpost is experiencing significantly greater parcel growth maybe than a lot of other postal organisations, maybe in the region of 20% year on year. Since 2019, like we've seen over 200% growth in our parcel volume. And even just looking at the most recent September, when we look at September 25 versus 24, the month alone is up 41% in terms of parcel volume. And year to date, we're running about 24.5%. So types of challenges we faced.
Tell us a bit about the workforce challenges then, because you've talked about the volumes and the competing forces with letters and parcels. But you mentioned that you've got fixed costs.
Yeah.
What does that mean in terms of constraints and managing the workforce and things like that?
Yeah, so I suppose we do have our fixed costs. So we have people that are employed full time, regardless of what arises on any particular day. And I mentioned already, they're being able to change and being able to introduce change and do it quickly and across numerous sites. So I suppose the big challenge we faced there was really, like, you can have all the systems you want. The systems that we use are really excellent. But unless you're able to bring the people with you, that's really the key challenge. So, and we have successfully implemented our national route design across 90 of our sites, total of 86% of our routes. So over 4,500 people have been impacted to some degree by that change. And I suppose it's all about explaining the why to them, why we needed to do this. And they understand that, in fairness, as well. Everybody can see the declining letters, like the postal operatives see that themselves. We don't need to tell them that, they can see that. But equally, they can see the increase in the parcels. So they realise that we have to change. And I suppose it doesn't make it easy at the same time. Once you go, they accept that we need to change, but actually, when it's impacting on me, myself, not so sure about that, Key to that then is, I suppose, really bringing the staff representative bodies along with us, or our union partners, bringing them along with us.
Over the last 4 years that we've been working with Laura and her team directly, one of the most refreshing things that I found, that I learned especially, is getting the unions involved early on. And I know Post, early in the project, I mentioned earlier, we did the test and learn. The reason they did that was just not to deploy a solution in the field without getting that key stakeholders' input. So they're able to deploy it, get the union feedback. What do they like? What don't they like? They came back to us with some improvements, some changes, and we continue to work with quicker iterations than what we are used to with some other postal organizations. And it really, that change management piece was, I find, pretty successful from talking with the Post team. And I think one of the key quotes, and Laura, you can correct me about this, but one of the, I believe it was one of the union heads, where when the initial deployment happened, his comment was, we gave everybody a fair day's work. So we really balanced out the workload for employees, because letters are going down, parcels are going up. Some employees might be doing overtime, some might not have a full day work. Maybe Laura, you can give more details on that.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, I started in Post during COVID, so it's an interesting time to see the exponential growth in parcels, the decline in letters, and a sense of urgency to look at changing how do we meet the business needs now and in the future. So when we were working with Giro, it took a bit of time to understand the system and what it can do and what it's doing today, what we needed to do in the future. So we looked at it from two angles. One, from the how do we update our systems, how do we integrate our toolkit a bit better to get to the right answer quicker and create a fair day's work and, balance labour for everybody, but meeting the business needs as well. So from the staff perspective, it made sense. We deliver to 2.3 million addresses every day. No 2 days are the same in any operation in here. But we needed to work on how do we make it fit for purpose for on the ground. And Garrett said earlier, we're impacting 4,500 staff and we want to impact them in the right way. So we had to take a chance, look at what we do, what we maybe didn't do in Georoute before. So we didn't design collections in Georoute before. We merged collections and delivery to look at that end of the business. But we wanted to look at picking offices where we could learn from a big size office, a medium size office, a highly urban area, a highly rural area, and a mixture, so that we could learn and understand how we're going to impact people on the ground. So there was a lot of transparency in what we did. We looked at, what are the principles of design for the future of Post? How do we define ourselves and simplify ourselves? Because we can be very complicated, and we wanted to simplify that. Because there's no need. If you have the right toolkit and the right systems and process, you should be able to explain it very simply. So we looked to kind of redefine that, simplify it, and then focus on the future needs, but at a pace that we've never achieved before in Post. So that is where we had to work very collaboratively with the Giro team. And what worked was translating our stories into a user story for them. It was a really clever way of saying, I'm a postal operative, I need to do this. I'm a working leader, I need to be able to do that. I'm a data analyst, I need to be able to do this. And it started to, in bite-sized chunks, make a lot more sense. So when we got into test and learn, we had a good bit of confidence, but it was still risky. And we learned a lot. We had a lot of learnings out of test and learn. And for me, it gave us that confidence that we're doing something right. But, we've missed a few tricks. We need to pivot. We need to adjust. We need to learn. No two offices are the same. So we spent the next few months working on that as a team.
Well, you're talking about the collaboration there, aren't you, and working together. Peter, perhaps you can sort of share a little bit about how the collaboration started, and maybe we can throw it over to Unpost to talk about some of the objectives that you had as part of this project together.
The initial requirement was we want to be able to redesign our last mile routes to be in a way that can benefit from all the years of changes, the letters going down, be more efficient. The collaboration really started when, in my perspective, when the Unpost team came to Montreal, and it really builds that relationship. I always say that you never really know anybody until you give them that first handshake in person. So there's people on Laura's team that we worked with remotely for quite some time, but when they came to Montreal, that dynamic really changed. So we're able to question them more on the why. So Laura said, she mentioned just now about the pace at which they're trying to transform the organization. And one of the things for us to really understand is what is their pace, because we don't want to push new technologies, new solutions too fast. And we also don't want to go too slow. And one of the things that we were able to understand is where exactly are you going? And by having 2 weeks together, we were dedicated. Our team that worked on the project was dedicated, and the Unpost team was dedicated. There's no distractions when you're at the office, you work teams, everybody is dedicated to the project for 2 weeks. And it's really getting to understand why are you trying to do this? And as much as Georoute, we just do last mile optimization. One of the big value propositions for our team, we've been around for 40 years, is we really understand the postal organizations. We work with a lot of the biggest postal organizations in the world, such as Unpost, and we understand the operation. So the solution, and clients often come to us and ask us, are we using the full capacity, the full power of Georoute? And the answer is not yes or no. The answer that I like to give is, it's not that you're not using every functionality or every feature that we've developed over 40 years, it's that we're tuning it for your specific needs. And by us understanding what you're trying to do and really getting a feel for your operational challenges, we're able to take all of these features and cherry pick them in the software to really work with the team and give them something that works for their workflow. Not the ideal that we would say if it was a blank slate, but really this is what's going to work with your reality. And that's what we really try to work with. And you cannot beat having those 2 weeks in person. The teams get aligned, they build that relationship, you build that trust, and you build that collaboration that really was the first step for the success of the project as we've seen over the last 4 years.
So we sent a team of people, as Peter says, over to Montreal. And initially we looked at a week. We were very structured with our ask and what we wanted to do and turned around. And the commitment we had from Giro was phenomenal as well. And all the expertise were there at our fingertips. But you had a team of people with over 100 years experience in Unpost who were used to doing things a different way, but who were exploring, what's possible, what if, and how are we going to, and, we had a goal, but reaching that goal is always very complex given the systems and, the impact you have on people every day. It was really nice to see the team who all had people at home waiting for them, wanting to stay on to finish the job. That sense of we can see that there is something here, we need to spend a bit more time. So initially we set out for 1 week. It ended up being 2. And I heard about the amazing time that they had with Giro working and the collaboration and the seeing something go from an idea to actually being available in our toolkit was amazing. So that sense of wanting to get the job done and staying on was brilliant. And it was great to see the team come back safely and come back with something that was really fit for purpose and at a scale that we've never done before or achieved before in Unpost.
And there's one other thing. So we talked about the team that actually gets the job done. We talked about the unions, but I think the third key pillar here. It's the early buy-in and the support that AnPost had from their senior executives. I mean, none of that would have happened without their support on the project. And maybe the AnPost team can comment on that a little more.
Yeah, so when we set out to look at doing this differently and what it is and trying to simplify it for ourselves to say, what are we actually asking for? We were fortunate enough that the likes of our MD had previous experience working with our teams, understood the operation very well. Our IT team knew about the systems and the software and where we were and where we wanted to get to. So as long as we could explain a good story and build that trust, we had really strong backing. Everybody saw the vision. We had challenging goals as well given to us, but we all love a challenge. And we've had that support ever since, all the way through this. And even the other day, we were just relaying how far we've come. Garrett mentioned the 90 designs. And the space that we're in compared to, 6 to 8 designs a year. We've 90 over less than 2 years. It's phenomenal and it's a great pace, but we need to keep going. And we have ambitions, we have goals. We want to set out for the common good in Ireland. We want to make sure we deliver a great service every day to those 2.3 million addresses as well. So it doesn't stop here, but we still had that support from the get-go. And we proved each time, I hope, through test and learn, through the changes we made and through what we see on the ground, that it was worth it and it was worth the investment.
So Garrett, tell us a bit about the, is it called the National Route Design Project? Tell us a bit about that and what the objectives were and what it means in terms of AnPost's overall strategy and some of the other things that we've been talking about already today.
Yeah, well, I suppose, if we go back to kind of what I said earlier, like the way our business was changing, we needed to, our final mile routes needed to reflect that change in the product profile that we're delivering. So we set out on like Laura said, a very ambitious change program. The main objectives really were to drive in capacity into our final mile routes, so to enable us to deliver that increased volume of parcels, but also factoring in the decline in the core letter product. So that was a huge part of it, allowing us to deliver the service for our customers, which gives us a fair chance at retaining those customers. I think Peter referenced it earlier, certainly a main point for us was to drive in equal distribution of labour so that the routes were fair right across the board. And I suppose most importantly, it was actually about making the whole operation more efficient. So just driving in those efficiencies into the operation, and it has been very, very successful. I referenced in the last 2 years, our parcel product is up 48%. We've about an 8% increase in our delivery points, but actually our final mile hours are actually even to where they were 2 years ago. So we haven't increased the number of hours, but we are, delivering that increased volume to an increased number of delivery points. So I suppose they were the main objectives of the National Route Design Programme.
Now, a question without notice. We're recording this in October, which means that it's, as Sir Alex Ferguson once said, it's squeaky bum time when it comes to peak season. So how are we feeling about peak? Given we've been through this transformation, you've been extracting more value from the network. How we feel about peak? Is there confidence amongst the AnPost team when it comes to approaching peak?
Yeah, we're very confident. We know it's going to be a challenge. We like last week, for argument's sake, we delivered in excess of 1.7 million items. Like, we know that needs to stretch to nearly 3 million for peak. So that's a huge stretch, but we've been planning for peak. I suppose we always have peak as a horizon for us. It's always on our minds. Even doesn't matter what time of the year it is, we're always planning towards it. And that's actively planned for right throughout the year. We know it's coming and we're prepared for it. But it does pose challenges because we're a small island economy. We can be significantly impacted by weather. A lot of our product is coming from Europe, across the sea from Europe or from the UK. Weather can impact, and last year significantly impacted on our peak operations. But we're ready. Insofar as we can be ready, we're ready for all the eventualities.
And can I just add to that, from the peak perspective, so the National Redesign Programme is focused on business as usual. So we haven't focused on peak for this. It's how do we have a fair day for everybody every day and everybody's going home roughly around the same time. So for that, in the past where we didn't have that and people were returning at different times because the route might have a higher amount of volume historically, or the geography of a different area was challenging, we've balanced that out to give everybody a fair representation of this is 7.5 hours in the day. Peak is peak, and it will pose its own challenges. It's additional product to deal with. But we have at least a balance and a foundation of, we can achieve this every day and we know this is the excess, and how we do that. We're trying to plan and structure that and understand the impact that has normal routes as well and day-to-day routes.
Peter, we've been hearing from Unpost about how it's been implemented. You mentioned earlier Giro has worked with many postal operators. From your perspective, what are some of the learnings from this process that you and other as Giro and other postal operators can learn from this? Learnings you can learn from. You all know what I mean. Some advice for other people who are thinking about embarking on this journey, I suppose.
So I have a few actually. So the first one is the collaboration piece. It's very difficult to do kind of transformational projects such as this when people are working in separate time zones, working remotely. You get distracted from your day-to-day obligations. Really getting people together and workshop, that is something that I've been preaching for the last few years to all of our clients and potential clients, that get the teams together. Let's understand what you're doing. You need to understand how we do it so that we can find the right ways of working together. So that's the first one. The second one is start early. So we have other projects in the pipeline with Anpost, and we've helped them build their business cases and really kind of prove the return on investment for any solution. So before you take that step to launch a project, it's really thinking about it beforehand. And we love doing that with our clients, is really kind of justifying the business case for what's this new strategy going to look like operationally. Because it's a big investment, big change management investment as well. So be sure before you pull the trigger. And my favorite is, Laura, you can mention whose quote this is, but it's, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And Laura's mentioned that to me in the beginning of the project. And again, I think it really highlights the way forward with any client trying to do these big transformational changes. Again, it's don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And who was that? Just to give credit where credit's due, Laura?
That was our Chief Financial Officer, Peter Quinn.
So just give him a shout out for that. That one.
So Laura and Garrett, what about from your perspective? What are some of the things that you've learned from doing this project that you would, if you were speaking to another postal operator, say, well, here are some of the things you've got to tick off, you've got to do in order to make a project like this a success?
So I suppose when we started out on this whole program, we kind of mapped out what we needed to do, and we all the various different processes that had to happen and when they needed to happen, right from the start of designing, even getting all the volumes together, designing the routes, then engaging with our staff, making all the background system changes in the background, and then actually going live with the new designed routes. So I think that was a game changer for us, that it, having an agreed process. And when I say agreed, that's agreed between Laura and myself, the senior management team, but also with our union colleagues as well. So that allowed us to actually plan what we were going to do kind of week by week, month by month, right across the year. So that was probably one of the main things that allowed us to move at a pace. And I think early intervention as well, like when required. So if something isn't working or something isn't working the way we think it should be, and we need to make a change, get in there early and make it early rather than just waiting. And I suppose then the importance of like strong frontline management team that fully understand the process as well was key. So again, the frontline management, they're the people that engage with the postal operatives. They're and once they're confident in in telling the story of what we're doing. That's huge as well.
Yeah, well, I think just from the perspective of setting out on this for other postal industries as well, there was 2 key factors. It's people and systems, really. And we needed the systems to help people more. And we needed to listen to the people on the ground and the management teams as well to understand what are the business needs. So that's where we set out on their design principles, which are principles we stand by and rules that we abide by to make sure it's consistent and standard approach across each of our DSUs. Our data, like any organisation, was and can be quite fractured at times. There's a lot of data, but sometimes we're data rich but information poor. So we're drawing conclusions that may not be the factual conclusion, it's the anecdotal piece. So we wanted to get rid of the anecdotal, understand what's actually going on the ground, and make it fit for purpose every day of the week that we could. So I'd say understand your data if you can. Try and streamline it, which is not easy to do, but it's definitely the ultimate goal. And when it comes to people, understanding and listening to the voice of the customer, which is not only your front-facing public, but the staff on the ground that have to do this job every day. I'm not the one that goes out and does this job every day. So that's why test and learn was important, to say, well, we think we have something that's really good. We spent a lot of time and effort and energy on it. But is it actually going to work on the ground? And that's where systems and people come together very well. So there were a lot of lessons learned from it because, as we say, there is no such thing as perfection, which is hard at times to take, but, understandable. But we wanted to learn from that and adjust it and say, okay, well, what do we need to do? How do we need to pivot? And our director, Craig, always looks at this from, you commit to something, you commit to a timeline. You build the trust then by trying to meet that timeline as much as you can, because sometimes there's things that are out of your control. So we worked very hard, as Garrett said, on the intervention piece. If there was something that we needed to do, we tried to intervene as early as possible. We tried to say, look, get you, and we need to fix that, and we're going to fix it, and we'll be back to you in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we did, and we achieved those timelines. And I think that's why we're at the stage where we have the 90 DSUs redesigned now, which is great and phenomenal. But we don't want to stop there. We want to keep going, and we want to make sure we support and continue with our people and with our systems as well to support that.
We've covered a lot of territory in this discussion. And Peter, before we wrap up, if people want to find out more about Giro's products and services, how can they find out more? Where should they go? Who should they contact?
So you can always visit our website, Giro.ca. That's Giro.ca, sorry. You can even email us at info@Giro.ca. And you can always find me on LinkedIn, Peter DeSantis. Well, it's Pietro, my real name, Pietro Peter DeSantis. I put both. Find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be really happy to exchange some communication. If there's anything you're curious about in terms of our postal products, I'd be happy to do that. It's one of the things I love to do, is talking postal and different strategies to get projects delivered for any type of client.
I'll put a link to Giro's website, Peter's LinkedIn profile, and various other bits and bobs on the Postal Hub podcast website. So if you're out walking the dog, or, I don't know, flying a kite, whatever it is that you do in your spare time, check out thepostalhub.com, and I'll have a link to everything there. Peter DeSantis, Laura Shields, and Garrett Byrne, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, CTT, POS Malaysia, and a cavalcade of stars that will light up the galaxy, or something like that. I don't know. Well, we've got loads of great people coming up soon on the Postal Hub podcast, and you don't want to miss any of them. And so what should you do? You should subscribe to the podcast, you should subscribe to the newsletter, and you should follow me on LinkedIn. So how do you do all that? You subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, or the Amazon one, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also leave a rating or a review if you like when you subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to my email newsletter at thepostalhub.com. Follow the links. You'll be able to subscribe to the newsletter there, or even subscribe to the Daily Delivery Digest if that's the kind of thing that floats your boat. And you can follow me on LinkedIn. Ian Kerr is my name. Just look for Ian Kerr. It's the photo of me from a few years ago. I don't look like that in real life anymore, but I do that to confuse the algorithm. Yeah, why not? Algorithms need to be confused, don't they? Anyway, moving swiftly onwards, follow me on LinkedIn to improve the quality of your LinkedIn feed, because there's so much rubbish out there right now. Let's be honest. You can email me if you want. My email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.